on our stiles, but we can't start cutting right away. Otherwise, when we put the two together on the outside of the door, you're going to see that little slot right there, see? So what we have to do when we do our stiles is start a little bit shy and end a little bit shy. So we'll make those cuts here next. Okay, we've got our door basically done. Here's our two stiles, and here's our two rails, top rail and the bottom rail right here. All we have to do now is take and apply a little bit of glue on our stile and our rail. Take this and sit in our clamps. We're going to do that next. Take and stick it in our clamps, clamp it up, and our glass panel door is done. We've got our square glass panel door done. Now what we want to do is make an arched glass panel door. To do that, all we're going to do is substitute this square rail like here with an arch like this. To do that, what we need to do is keep the same length, of course, but we're going to make the width of that piece 4.5 inches. And after we've got that piece cut out now, what we need to do next is change bits. We're going to put the cope cutter in that we had to begin with and start again by making the cope cuts. Okay, we've got our cope cutter back in there. That's the original cope one we started with at the beginning. We're going to make our two cope cuts on the ends of that top arched rail. Again, using our push block. Okay, there's our two cope cuts. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we have to put that arch into that top rail. Okay, to do that, we've got a set of templates. And our templates come in different sizes, starting with 9.5, 10.5. They go up in 1-inch increments all the way up to a 22-inch door. So you can make any size door you want. Well, the door I'm making today is going to be about a 13-inch wide door. So we're going to use a template that says 13.5, 14.5. All of our templates have a center point. All I have to do is line that center point up with the center line I found in that top rail already right there. Okay? I'm going to line those two center lines up right like that, and then I'm going to nail that template on the back side. Now, the next thing we have to do is we have to take this top rail to our bandsaw, and I'm going to bandsaw this out to within about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch so we can flush trim it and get it exact. You can see we have that rail cut out to within about 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch or so of our template. Now the next thing we're going to do is stick a simple flush trim bit into our router, and we're going to flush trim that rail to the same shape as our template. But before we do that, I want to make some jigs with this router bit, this cope cutter, while I still have it in there for our next operation. And all I'm going to do is cut a cope cut along this piece right here, and I'm going to cut some cope cuts on these scrap woods. And you'll see later where they're going to be put to use. But I just want to do it while I have that cope cutter in there right now. Okay, you can see we got cope cuts cut all on these 4 edges of these 2 little blocks here and one on here. I'll show you later when we do our divided light where these are going to come in handy. All right. Right now, what I need to do is change this bit. I'm going to insert my flush trimming bit in, and then I'll show you how we flush trim that top rail. Okay, we're ready to take that cope cutting bit out of there now. And we're going to insert that flush trimmer in there. Snug it up, and we're ready to go. Okay. Put my insert on here. Now, what I have to do, this bit is not part of the set, so you can see it's not matched. What I have to do is I have to lower that bit so the bearing is riding on my template. So I'm going to go down here and lower that bit so that the bearing is riding on the template. Or another way of doing it is the top of the carbide right here is right at the top of the cut, right? Right there. We want to make sure, I'm going to lock it in. We want to make sure that that carbide cutter is cutting all of our wood. All right, we're set to the right height. We're ready to start flush trimming this top rail. Now, whenever you have a small diameter router bit in there, you always want to turn the speed of your router up as fast as it'll go. And you'll see what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be making contact with my template out here. I don't want to start on the wood. I'm going to start out here, stop the bearing, and then you'll see me make the cut just like that. All right? So we're going to turn the speed up on the router. On the template, see? You can see now we made that top rail the same exact shape as whatever template we happen to be using. The next thing we have to do is we have to make this profile cut right here on the top of the rail on to this rail right here. So we're going to change bits and put the pattern cutting back in and show you how we make that cut. We've got our pattern cutting bit back into our router, and we had to reset that to the correct height as we did our original stiles and rails. Now, we're going to take this arched top here now, and the template will make contact with that bearing on the top of our cutter, and we're going to make our cut just like we did with our flush trim bit a little while ago. So we're going to make that cut right now. I'll show you how it's done. Right there is our pattern cut made to fit on our arched glass panel door. Okay, there's our glass panel door. We have it just dry clamped together with my hands here now. And I'll explain a little bit about the back here when you cut your glass. You can see we have a curve. You have to cut the glass at a curve, and it's fairly easy to do with a glass cutter once you get the hang of it. If you'd rather not do that, what you're going to have to do is take a straight bit on a router and just mill all this piece out right in here. I'll mill all this out with a straight bit, and then you can cut a square piece of glass and drop in like that. Either way will work. But that's your arched glass panel door. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take that arched glass panel door that I have here, and we're going to show you how we're going to make divided lights into that glass panel door. We're ready to start making our divided light door. And to cut our muttons and mullions, here's how we figure dimensioning on that. Remember how our door was 12 inches wide? We subtracted 4 to get our rail at 8 inches. Well, same thing goes up and down. If our door we're 2 7/16 here, and our templates automatically give you a 2 7/16 inch reveal at its narrowest point. So just assume this is a regular square door, 2 7/16, 2 7/16. So if our door is 20 inches long, let's say, I subtract 4, and that gives me 16 inches for this mutton right here. So it's very easy. I know the length of this. It's 16 inches. Okay, now I need to find the length of these two pieces. These are two separate pieces. Well, if this piece on the bottom, if our rails are 8 inches, this combined length is going to be 8 inches also, but we're bypassing in the middle here. We're not connecting. Well, what's that measurement? Here's how we figure it. Remember, our profile cuts 7/16 here and 7/16 inch here. 7/16 and 7/16 is 7/8, right? I always cut all of my muttons and mullions 1 1/8 inches. So 1 1/8 minus 7/8 leaves me with 1/4 of an inch right here in the middle where I'm not connecting with these two pieces. So if I divide that 1/4 of an inch into this piece and this piece, that means I have to subtract 1/8 of an inch off of this one and 1/8 of an inch off of that one. So if this is 8 inches, this would be 4 and 4, but we subtract an 1/8 and an 1/8. So these two pieces here will be 3 7/8 inches long. And all of our muttons and mullions are 1 1/8. Okay, now the first one I'm going to make is the long one. We always make the long ones first, 16 inches. And if you're doing a bunch of doors and they're all the same, let's say, which happens a lot, we're going to cut, let's say we're going to cut 2 or 3 of these that are going to be 16 inches long. Well, we have to cut the cope cuts first, remember? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a wide piece, and it's easier to do this anyway. This piece is 16 inches, see? And we're going to cut our cope cuts, and this is going to be our muttons and mullions are going to be taken out of this piece. So we're going to cut our cope cuts all at once for all those pieces. We have our cope cutter set back in our router table, and we're going to next cut the cope cuts for our long muttons here. Okay, we've got our cope cutter set to the right height as we originally had. We're going to cut the cope cuts for all of our muttons and mullions right here. Okay, there's our cope cuts for our 1 1/8 inch muttons and mullions we're going to take out of here now. So now, what we're going to do is change bits, and I'm going to cut my pattern cut on one side right there. Okay, we're ready to change bits again, and what's nice about changing our bits, remember all we have to do is take that cope cutter out, drop the pattern cutting bit in, and we're good to go, right like that. Okay, now we're going to bring our fence over. Our fence drops into our pivot point. There's my bearing. We'll get our fence flush with the bearing, and we're ready to start cutting the pattern cut. Right there. Now, remember, we